Good evening. Welcome to the Scituate Special Town Meeting. A quorum being present, if the meeting will come to order, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, and justice for all. Thank you. The town clerk has advised me that the warrant has been properly served. I'd entertain a motion that we dispense with the formal reading of the warrant, which was posted on October 27. Could I have a motion to waive the reading? Motion, second. All those in favor of waiving the formal reading of the warrant, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. It's a unanimous vote. Thank you. Peter Toppin has graciously agreed to serve as the assistant moderator, and I would ask for a motion to approve my appointment of Mr. Toppin as assistant moderator. May I have a motion? Second. Have a second. All those in favor of the appointment of Mr. Toppin as assistant moderator, say aye. Those opposed, no. It's a unanimous vote. Mr. Toppin, you are again appointed assistant moderator. The town clerk has, before the meeting, sworn in the tellers. Those tellers are Ann Breen, Richard Harding, Kristen Ross, Mary Jo McNally, Linda Plowman, Kathy McGowan, Chris Marachi, Brian Dempsey, Penny Scott Pipes, and Allison Short. Thank you for your willingness to help us out with the meeting. Next, I would ask the chair of the Board of Selectmen, Maura Curran, to introduce her board and the person sitting at the Board of Select Board table.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming out this evening. Before I do introduce our Select Board, I thought it would be good for us and appropriate for us just to take a moment to reflect on all the atrocities that are taking place around the world today and continue to hope for peaceful resolutions for all of those conflicts. Thank you. So tonight, this evening, we have the board. I will start with our Vice Chair, Andrew Goodrich, our newest members, Susan Harrison, Karen Connolly, and Karen Canfield. And at the very end is our Town Council, Dave DeLuca and Joe Proctor. And also here at the front table, most importantly, our Finance Director, Nancy Holt, and our Town Administrator, Jim Pedro. And please welcome and thank all of our town employees that are here this evening as well.
Thank you. I would next ask the chair of the advisory committee, Elise Russo, to introduce her committee. Thanks, Elise.
Good evening, everybody. I wanted to introduce you to the members of the advisory committee. Dan McGuigan, who is the vice chair. Jamie Gilmore, who is the recently retired chair. Jerry Kelly, a former chair. Linda Ferguson. Connor Doherty, who is our newest member. Patrice Metro, Missy Seidel, and Mark DeCosimo. I want to thank them all for their hard work and preparation, particularly for this meeting and throughout the year. And I also want to give a special thanks to Jamie for his last 2 years of leadership. He's done a great job, and we're going to miss him. I just wanted to also say, to remind everybody that we are an advisory board. As such, the votes that we come up with as a committee are non-binding. It's really up to you as the legislature for the town to make the decisions that are required. We're here to help you. We do a deep dive, we meet with everybody, we talk to petitioners, and we form an opinion and put together that booklet, which I hope you're able to take a look at. And it's all in an attempt to help you, and I hope that you find it worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise. Next, I would ask Nicole Brandolini, Chair of the School Committee, to introduce her committee and the superintendent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. It is my pleasure to introduce the members of the Scituate School Committee, Janice Lindblom, Dr. Carrie Barkowski, our newest member, Maria Fenwick, and also with us tonight, Superintendent of Schools, Bill Burkhead, and Dr. Tom Rabb, our new Director of Business and Finance. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would also ask Chris Kasia to introduce the Capital Planning Committee. We will hear from them on their article a little later tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to introduce, I'll start with my newest member, Tom O'Grady, Richard Taft, Michael Gibson, Jim Boudreau, the town administrator, Nicole Brandolini, and Dr. Carrie Bukowski, our school committee reps, Andrew Goodrich from the select board, and Jamie Gilmore from the advisory committee. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Chris. All right, at this point, I'd like to take a moment in memory of those town employees and town officials who have passed since we were last together at the annual meeting. Mr. William Weber, English teacher in the Scituate schools. Ann Carroll, a Scituate school teacher. Michael Hayes, longtime member of the school committee. Ron Wheatley, Republican Town Committee, election worker, Veterans Advisory Council, and Cable TV Advisory Council. If we can take a moment to remember those former employees and officials of the town. Thank you. My name is Jim Toomey. I'm the town moderator. My job is to chair the meeting and decide questions of order. I don't vote on articles. And I just want to take a couple of minutes to talk about the process and how our meeting works. We have basically two branches of government in the town of Scituate. The executive branch, which is represented here by the selectmen and the school committee, and the legislative branch. You, the town meeting, are the legislative branch of the town government. Each of you is a citizen legislator. The executive branch boards, whose members are our guests here today, have made requests to you here in the form of the articles in the warrant asking for your approval on various issues. The purpose of this meeting is to allow you, as citizen legislators, to review these executive branch requests and to question, you're entitled to question the executive branch as to any of the issues in the warrant. And as Elise pointed out to you, it's the meeting who ultimately decides these issues, and ultimately the vote is up to the members of this meeting in terms of what is and what isn't approved. I want to make sure that everyone has a fair chance to participate here and everyone understands what the process is. Although it seems like there's some formality, if there are any questions as we move along, simply come to a mic, ask that you be recognized, and if you have a question, we will try and answer it and make sure you understand both the substance and the procedure as we go through the meeting. Earlier, we introduced the members of the advisory committee. The advisory committee performs a very important role for the town meeting. It's a standing committee created by state statute. The advisory committee meets all year round to examine the issues that are going to come before town meeting. They work with each of the departments and do a very in-depth review of all of the issues, both financial and otherwise, that are contained in the warrant. They will make a report and they make a recommendation. As noted, it's a recommendation only, it's not binding, and the final decision on these issues for you, the voters, in the town meeting. I'd highly recommend that everyone follow along in the meeting using the advisory committee booklet, which both explains each of the articles and gives a recommendation and a rationale for the recommendation as we go through this. There are certain procedural rules. Again, I don't want formality to overcome the substance and people's participation, but just to summarize a few of the procedural issues. All non-voters would sit in the non-voting section in the front bleachers unless they're sitting with a board who they're advising. Generally, only registered voters are entitled to address the meeting. If someone who is a non-registered voter rises to speak, unless there's a timely objection raised, I will allow those persons to speak as it pertains to a particular article. If there's a concern about that, someone should rise and ask that we do that. In order to address the meeting, you would rise to speak, come to a microphone, and be recognized before you speak. Before you begin the presentation, I'd ask that you identify yourself by your name and address. This process shows respect for those present and helps the clerk in terms of keeping meeting minutes. If you're here representing a board or client, you should identify the relationship to that board or client. If you're an article sponsor, the first step here is for you to make a motion on your article, and then you'll be entitled to speak to the article, explain it, and state your position. Article sponsors have 10 minutes to make their initial presentation, and then others will be allowed to speak. In general, other than sponsors, there's a 5-minute limit on presentations. You cannot speak a second time until all others who have asked for a chance to speak have had a chance to speak. I'd ask that speakers confine their remarks to the motion that's on the floor, address the specific issues in the article, and we would not accept any personal discussion, personality, or any attacks on anyone's motives in the process. If you have questions on an article as we go through it, by rising and being recognized, you may ask any questions that pertain to the article of any of the town officials. All of the department heads and division heads are here for you today in order to make sure that any information you need to make a decision is available to you. When you ask those questions, you may or may not get an answer, and we're not in a position to compel any answers. If you don't get an answer, then you draw your own conclusions. There is a process if debate is wearing on and you feel that we've heard enough on a particular issue to offer a motion called moving the question. This motion is one to end the debate. I accept it only when I'm content that people on both sides, all sides of an issue, have had a fair opportunity to make their presentation. But assuming we've heard from all the sides and people have had that fair opportunity, I would accept a motion to move the question. I'd caution you that if you make that motion, there is no speech involved. It is simply to make the motion. The motion takes precedence over any other business, and we'll move to that. It's not to be made as a punctuation mark after the end of a presentation. It's a separate motion. Generally, we operate with voice votes in which I try to determine what the vote is in the meeting. At some point, if it's unclear just from what I hear, I may ask for a standing vote, or if necessary, I would ask that we do a teller vote, which is actually an account by the tellers. That's time-consuming, so we only do that if it's really necessary. On any instance where I declare a vote, if 7 or more voters rise, you can request a televote. So you have that right if you're dealt the call that I make on the vote. If 7 voters rise, then we'll go to a vote by the tellers. I also have to note that we have a bylaw which allows me to call a vote that requires a 2/3 vote. Again, be aware that if someone immediately rises and questions a declaration of a 2/3 vote, we will take account. Finally, seems a little better tonight, but sometimes different spots in this room can be difficult to hear. If you have problems hearing the presentations, please let us know. The solution may be simply that you move, but we'll do our best. We don't want anyone missing out because they cannot hear the discussion. And last but not least, please turn off your cell phones. With that, we will move to the first order of business, which is the consent agenda. You have in your advisory committee book get the page. On Appendix A on page 22 is the consent agenda. Now, the idea with the consent agenda, especially at a special town meeting, is that there are a number of routine items, rounding out budgets, for example, canceling debt that was unnecessary to use, things of that nature, which are routine. And in order to expedite the meeting, we group all of those together and we take one vote on that, on all of that answers the questions on all of those articles. But the idea here is not to exclude anyone from talking about an issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through those articles which we're now going to have in the consent agenda, and if anyone wants to discuss any of those items, just call out hold. We'll remove that article from the consent agenda and have a separate discussion of that article in order as we move along. And again, if you want to discuss one of these issues, please say hold, because once we get to the consent agenda, we really need a unanimous vote for the articles. So the discussion should be separated if anyone has a specific concern or a specific question on the articles. I'll go now through the articles. If you want to hold one for a separate discussion, simply call out hold. Article 1, unpaid bills from the prior year. Article 2, compensation of elected officials. Article 3, budget reconciliations for fiscal year 2024. Article 4, setting up special purpose stabilization funds. Article 6, maintenance, improvement, and protection of open spaces. Article 7, funds to match grants. Article 8, transfer to the various reserve funds. Did I hear a hold on number 8? Hold on number 8. We'll remove number 8 from the consent agenda and speak to Article 8 separately as we get to that article in order. Article 9, retirement of debt. Article 10, rescission of borrowing authorizations. And Article 13, amend street acceptance for Kavanaugh Road. At this point, the consent agenda will consist of Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, not 8, 9, 10, and 13. And I would entertain a motion from the selectmen on the consent agenda items. Ms. Curran.
I move that the town vote to take Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, and 13 out of order, and that they be passed by consent in accordance with the motion shown on the consent agenda distributed this evening.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Motion is seconded. Could we have a recommendation from the advisory committee on the consent agenda minus Article 8?
The advisory committee approves that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. Again, this is going to require a unanimous vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. We have a unanimous vote. The consent agenda is approved. We will now move article by article to the remaining articles. The first of which is Article 5, which is get it in front of me. Which is to appropriate funds for the old Stockbridge landfill. Ms. Canfield for the Select Board.
Good evening, everyone. I move that the town appropriate $250,000 for the purpose of continuing the required studies of the old Stockbridge cap landfill, and to fund such appropriation, transfer $250,000 from free cash.
I have the motion. Do we have a second? Second. Motion is seconded. Ms. Canfield.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. In terms of history, this landfill was created in the 1930s. It was capped in 1976, or closed in 1976, and was then capped in accordance with the state regulations at the time. Environmental monitoring continued through the 90s, and then a few years ago, some of the abutting neighbors requested that Mass DEP review the site. These neighbors sought information to reassure them that the property was not negatively impacting public health. As a result, Mass DEP determined that the paperwork at the time of the closure was incomplete and that they would like to reassess the site. Since then, Mass DEP has directed the town to conduct a comprehensive site assessment using a qualified engineer and following the safety regulations of today to see how the condition of the site. That work was created, and it states, and I quote, "Potential landfill impacts to groundwater and surface water quality do not pose a significant risk of harm to human health, public safety, or the environment," end quote. There were no toxic gases anywhere on the site. What was discovered, however, is that the landfill has exceeded the boundaries of the town-owned property and has encroached on the neighbors' properties. The town is seeking these additional funds so that Scituate has the funds to address the situation to satisfaction of both Mass DEP and to the neighboring properties. The Select Board voted unanimously in support of this article.
Thank you. Could we have a report from the advisory committee?
Karen covered most of the situation. The advisory committee is also fully in favor of supporting and spending this money. It was capped in accordance with the environmental regulations at the time in 1976. So we just want to be sure that we are extremely thorough in our assessment of it today with our understanding of the environment today.
Mark, I neglected to have you identify yourself, just so people know.
Connor Doherty.
Thank you, Connor. All right, we have the motion, we have the recommendation of the advisory committee. Is there any discussion? I see there's a lady on the microphone to my right. Yes. you're
Hi,
recognized.
Freya Schlegel, 9 Westgate Lane. I was wondering if this testing includes testing of the groundwater for PFAS specifically?
Is there someone who can answer in terms of what tests are going to be conducted? Mr. Boudreau.
I do not believe that the testing that was done tested for PFAS. It's testing that's done in accordance with a landfill. The town does test for PFAS on a weekly basis, Kim, I think. We do test all our drinking water weekly for PFAS, though.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure. Go ahead.
Will they be testing this area, like the groundwater? I mean, they're forever chemicals, so they're forever in the ground. Like when they do the test wells?
Again, I couldn't tell you whether it would be required or not. We filed our report with DEP. We've had a public meeting on it. Now there's a 21-day comment period. DEP will review the comments, and then they will tell us whether they want additional testing or not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on Article 5? Seeing no one speaking on this article, I would move to a vote. All those in favor of the appropriation of $250,000 for studies at the old Stockbridge landfill, say aye. Those opposed? It's a unanimous vote. Moving now to Article 8, transfers to reserves. I would ask for a motion from the Board of Selectmen.
I move that the town appropriate the sum of $1,487,774 to existing reserves for the purposes as listed in the warrant, and to fund such appropriation transfer. $750,000 from free cash. Transfer $414,156 from Water Enterprise Fund retained earnings, and transfer $113,734 from Wastewater Sewer Enterprise Fund retained earnings. Transfer $138,803 from Transfer Station Enterprise Fund retained earnings. $31,383 from Waterways Enterprise Fund retained earnings, and transfer $39,698 from the Widows Walk Enterprise Fund retained earnings.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Have a second. You can have now an explanation of the board's position.
Sure. The board voted unanimously for these transfers. Essentially, there's two components. One is ensuring that there's funding for some future capital projects for Water Enterprise and the transfer station. The other one, I think, is a commitment that we have to OPEB and this board's understanding that there's future liability that we're trying to take care of. So we're trying to get ahead of that situation now to make sure that that liability stays lower. So for Widows Walk and other enterprise funds, we're trying to ensure and get more money into OPEB, essentially for those promises that we've made to those folks, again, paying it as soon and as quickly as we can so we don't have a larger problem down the line. Thank you.
Thank you. Recommendation from the Advisory Committee.
Hi. I think that Andrew's just explained it.
Excuse me, just
What?
if you would identify yourself for the meeting.
Patrice Metro for the Advisory
Thank you.
Committee. Andrew's just explained basically what it says here. All the individual, this is a common transfer of funds that the town does regularly, so there's some that has moved so that future capital projects could be funded, and then there's a number of them that are to add funds to the OPEB liability. I think the explanation down below just says more of basically what we've just said. So the Advisory Committee voted 8-0 in favor of the article.
Thank you. We have discussion on the motion. See a gentleman to my left, familiar-looking face.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I want to apologize in advance. I used to go to all of your meetings, and
You got to tell us who you are.
Oh, that's right. Tony Mignani, 98 Chief Justice Cushing Highway. I missed the meeting on this, and I think there's great information here. In the advisory booklet, it says that we have over $6 million in free cash, and I was wondering if we could get kind of an explanation in summary as to how we accumulated that much money in free cash. And then my second question is, we're putting almost $1 million into OPEB, and I wanted to know the explanation for giving such a large amount there as opposed to reinvesting that in the community.
Thank you. We have someone want to choose to answer those questions. Mr. Boudreau.
Hey, Tony, how are you?
Hey, Jim.
So free cash basically is the end of the year when the town closes out all its books, looks at all its revenues. That's the funds that we have left over. Most of the free cash is generated by turnbacks from town departments. A lot of it is because we've had several large projects fueling our growth numbers. As you're aware, we don't capture all that in our new growth number because then it would inflate the budget artificially. So that's where most of that came from growth and turnbacks. One of the biggest drags on our bond rating with AA+ is the lack of contribution into OPEB. We are spending $3 million in free cash for next year on the capital. Right now, for the next year's capital, I'm recommending over $3 million in free cash being spent on next year's capital, but the bond rating agencies have made it clear that we need to be more serious about funding our OPEB, so we took some of that to make basically a large donation into that bank account.
Thanks. Just a clarification, the $6 million of free cash, that's from departmental budget turnbacks, or was there like a big pickup from state aid or something like that?
The big pickup in terms of revenue is from new growth on real estate.
New growth on real estate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Article 8? Seeing no one at the mics, we'll move to a vote. This is a majority vote. All those in favor of the transfers to reserve funds, Article 8, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. It's a unanimous vote. Moving now to Article 11. Article 11 is the capital improvement plan. We could have a motion from the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town appropriate the sum of $4,064,993 for the purpose of funding the capital projects costs as listed in the printed warrant, and to fund such appropriation transfer $262,382 from free cash for item A, high school locker rooms phase 2, transfer $187,038.21 from free cash, transfer $149.47 from Article 1, special town meeting, April 2023, unpaid previous year bills, transfer $29,866.79 from Article 3P, Annual Town Meeting, April 2020, Simplicity Data Infrastructure. Transfer $63,190 from Articles 7 through 5 from Special Town Meeting 11/2020, Permitting System. Transfer $16,863 from Article 3M, Annual Town Meeting, April 2021, Phone System Expansion. Transfer $179.47 from Article 30, Annual Town Meeting, April 2021, Marine Unit Repowering. Transfer $1,649.59 from Articles 7 through 2, Special Town Meeting, 11/2020, Fire Station Number 1, Overhead Doors. Transfer $2,000 from Article 3L, Annual Town Meeting, April 2021, Refurbish 2006 Rescue Pumper. Transfer $13.30 from Article 3N, Annual Town Meeting, April 2022, Zoll Monitors. 2, transfer $864.60 from Article 3F, Annual Town Meeting, April 2019, security upgrades to facilities, and transfer $796.57 from the general fund premiums reserved for debt for Item B, Public Safety Complex, Video Security System End-of-Life Replacement, and transfer $4,685.11 from the Water Enterprise premiums reserved for debt, transfer $495,314.89 from the Water Enterprise retained earnings, and authorize the treasurer with the approval of the Select Board to borrow $3 million for Item C, replacement of water mains.
Have a motion. We have a second. Motion is seconded. Ms. Curran.
As you can see, our finance director did her due diligence to find every penny unturned to support this capital improvement plan. We're being asked to approve $4 million in total. Item A is Phase 2 of the high school renovation project that has come in over budget allocation from our annual town meeting and is requiring further appropriations to cover the costs. Our finance team has identified funds previously allocated for the high school roof repairs that came in a bit under projections, so these monies will come from free cash and will be diverted to cover the locker room renovations. Specifically, I believe it's the girls' team room. Item B, we have experienced some server failures that support our video and other security components at our public safety complex, and the equipment is approaching end of life and needs replacement to ensure our public safety teams have the tools and equipment necessary to perform their jobs. Funds have been identified from balances available from previous articles that are available in our free cash account. Item C, the water main replacement. The town this year took advantage of other projects and has adjusted its schedule, such as the Jericho Road water main schedule, to align with Eversource work that commenced this summer, in addition to leveraging the replacement work completed on 3A in preparation for the water treatment plant. The advancements of those projects has depleted our water main replacement available funds, and we are asking to appropriate $3.5 million to ensure that we can commence with future work as early as possible next spring to avoid waiting for the July 1 new fiscal year date. We will be allocating a little bit over $495,000 from our water enterprise retained earnings to help offset the amount the town needs to borrow. The board voted unanimously in support of this article and recommends approval of this motion.
Thank you. Could we have the advisory recommendation, Mr. McQuiggan?
Good evening. Thanks for all coming out and supporting the town. I'm Dan McGuigan from the Advisory Committee. The Advisory Committee looked into these articles, and they all are items that are projects that were previously approved. The additional funds requested appear reasonable, and the projects are all beneficial to the town. As such, the Advisory Committee voted unanimously in support.
Thank you. And this is a capital improvement plan. We ask for the recommendation of the Capital Planning Committee. Mr. Cascio.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Chris Karsha, Capital Planning Committee. Ms. Curran stole my thunder, so I will report report that we met, reviewed these 3 projects, and we voted unanimously to recommend all 3 of them.
Thank you. Is there discussion on the Article 11 capital improvement items? No discussion. No one being at the mics, we'll go to a vote. This requires a 2/3 vote because of borrowing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. It's a unanimous vote. Article 12, community preservation. Ms. Conley for the board, Select Board.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the town hear and act on recommendations from the Community Preservation Committee on the fiscal year 2024 community preservation budget and pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44B, to appropriate the sum of $134,543 as indicated in the printed warrant, and funding for such appropriation are to be expended first from any existing reserves for the purposes of such item, then appropriated from community preservation FY 2024 estimated revenues, with any excess to be appropriated from community preservation unreserved funds unless otherwise specified. All sums appropriated are further to be expended subject to the terms and conditions of the applications regarding such projects filed with the CPC and the votes of the CPC regarding approval of such items. The 2 items that we're recommending... Excuse me?
We have a motion, we have a second. Have a second. Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. There are 2 items that are included in this motion. One is $9,543 from the Community Preservation Fund balance. This is to be added to the housing reserve balance. The way the money comes in, sometimes we haven't appropriated enough into the various buckets that we need to, so we need to make it up, and that's what that is about. And then the $125,000 is to do the final design for the tennis courts out behind the high school. I think we'd all agree that our athletic fields are looking really terrific. We've spent a lot of money over the past few years, a great deal of money, in fact, most of it from CPC, to create great playing fields for our athletes. This will improve the tennis courts mightily by adding an extra court and improving the current courts, which will make it MIAA eligible for tournaments. So this is a further improvement of the athletic fields, not just for our student athletes, but for all the athletes in town. The Select Board recommended approval of this motion unanimously.
Thank you. Next, I'd ask for the recommendation of the Advisory Committee. Ms. Russo.
Thank you. Elise Russo. The Advisory Committee also recommended this unanimously. I think it's very important that we have the certification to be able to have competitive matches right here at the high school. Thank you. Thank you.
And last but not least, the statute requires a recommendation from the Community Preservation Committee, of which Mr. Finnerty is chairman. Mr. Finnerty.
Dan Fenley, 65 Forest Lane. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think Karen said everything that needs to be said about this. I would like to thank the committee, the Community Preservation Committee members, for their time and effort in vetting these applications for your approval. And they include Skylar Chick, Suzanne Brennan, Ann Burbine, Jill Caffrey, Mike Connor, Penny Scott Pipes, Meg Stillman, and Jack Whitaker. And I'd also like to say special thanks to Mary Sprague for her efforts for the past 9 years as admin for the committee, and I'd like to welcome Andrea Gillis as the new admin for that committee moving forward. I think Karen described everything. We have 2 articles here that we're trying to get approved, and the high school tennis courts are in dire need of replacing, and we expect to have a construction request for the next town meeting to complete the project. And the second item for the $9,543 is really just a bookkeeping issue to meet the state requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finnerty. Have the motion and the recommendations. Is there discussion of the article? No one at the mics. We'll move to a vote. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor of the community preservation appropriations, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. It's a unanimous vote. Thank you. Next article is Article 14, which is the revocation of civil service in the police department. Have a motion from the Board of Selectmen.
I move that the town revoke its acceptance, of the former Section 48 of Chapter 31 of the General Laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, voted under Article 38 of the warrant for the 1934 annual town meeting, and any amendments thereto insofar as such chapter and section relate to the civil service status of the positions of officers, sergeants, and lieutenants of the police department of the town of Scituate, so that the positions of officers, sergeants, and lieutenants of the police department shall no longer be subject to the provisions of Chapter 31 and the rules and regulations relating thereto, except that such revocation shall not affect any civil service rights which have come into existence between the town and any employee of the police department as a result of the original acceptance of the former Section 48.
Have a motion. We have a second. Second. Motion has been seconded. Mr. Goodrich.
I was caught off guard earlier today. I spoke with Chief Thompson. He asked a great question. Would you be proud if your son wanted to be a police officer? If you look around the news today, there is, in many areas, a labor shortage. Many businesses find it difficult to fill positions. Nationwide, law enforcement has a recruitment difficulties. Fewer young adults are choosing law enforcement. The removal of civil service has the approval, and I believe we'll hear shortly from our police chief, that has the approval of our police department. The flexibility of removing ourselves from civil service is to allow our police department to seek out and get more applicants for those folks who are going to be protecting and serving in our community. We have to allow our department to broaden their search for those folks. We often pay lip service, I think, when we say that we support law enforcement, and I want to listen to their recommendation. Policing demands unwavering courage and dedication and a commitment to public safety. Our police officers are those first responders and guardians of our community. So, would I be proud if my son wanted to be a police officer? You betcha. And I'll be here to help support. I know our board wants to support what you can do to make sure that we have the right folks in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a recommendation from advisory, please.
Hello again, Connor Doherty. The civil service program, it's really a vestige, it's like 140 years ago, to combat political appointments and completely unfair political firings. It offers a great amount of protections to people who use the program once they're hired and in place. They can't just be fired. But all of those protections, the whole reason it came into being is completely antiquated today. The protections that exist will remain in place for those who are hired via civil service. So saying that we're no longer going to hire from civil service doesn't mean the people who got in via civil service won't be able to enjoy those protections. All the towns in Massachusetts are kind of looking at this. Many have already moved off it, especially a lot of our neighbors. It's just kind of the trend. It's the way things are going. And as you heard, it really ties our hands right now to be tied to civil service. The list of potential people that can be hired by Chief Thompson is limited by where they live right now and if they've passed the exam. So we could have some incredibly qualified candidates wanting to work for us. If they haven't passed the civil service exam and they don't live here, he's not going to see them as an applicant. And that's kind of hurting our ability to have a really robust law enforcement hiring practice here. Chief Thompson, I know this has been on your radar for a while. The police union's in favor of this. The chief is in favor of this. We're unanimously in favor of this. We don't see a downside to it. Thanks.
Thank you. We have the motion, second, and recommendation. I'll start with the gentleman to my left at the microphone.
Tom Robotham, 50-man lot. Can I ask 2 questions?
Yes, give us both questions at once, if you would, please.
What restrictions are so outdated that they prevent hiring qualified candidates? Second, how will the proposed changes preserve the original intent of the civil service laws to prevent corruption and patronage and all of the things that were supported?
Thank you. I think Chief Thompson can answer that for us. Chief?
Good evening, thank you. Mark Thompson, Chief of Police. So your first question has to do with the restrictions and how are those restricting us right now in our hiring. One of the first things that we look at when the civil service list comes down is residency. So when we look at that residence list, our pool in Scituate has basically shrunken dramatically. But as the list starts to come down, we'll be looking at sons or daughters of law enforcement killed in the line of duty. Then you'll have veterans that are not necessarily Scituate residents, and then the list goes down from there. So when we start to look at what our pool of candidate looks like, it's really pretty restrictive as far as what's happening there. So we would start coming down with then veterans potentially who are much further outside of our area. And it makes it difficult for us to hire and look at what they're doing and also what capabilities they bring to the community. In terms of your second question, can you just repeat that again for me?
Yeah, getting rid of civil service for that. The original intent was to prevent corruption and patronage, unfair hiring, firing. What is being done to preserve those protections but expand the pool to people outside of Scituate?
So in terms of protecting what's there, if you were hired under civil service, those rights remain for you. So any of the officers that are currently there would be covered under that. But with advances in collective bargaining agreements, the protections that are there are really coming under that CBA now. So if you have an officer who's going to be disciplined within the department or potentially disciplined, more likely than not, they're choosing to go through arbitration and the protections that are afforded to them through that rather than going through civil service. Civil service is understaffed, the process is antiquated, and folks who are going there are looking at a year or potentially more to receive any type of mitigation or remedy to their solutions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. The lady at the center mic.
Deborah Burke, 202 Old Oaken Bucket Road. My question was related to the previous speaker's question. What exactly is it that the police department and the police union find objectionable about being under the service program? Is there anything besides the residency requirement? And related question, will Scituate police personnel still be required to take the civil service exam as a prerequisite of hiring?
Thank you. Chief?
So one of the greatest challenges that we face right now is the process. So there's both the hiring process and the promotional process. So anything that happens for us right now is dictated by the terms of what civil service is putting out. So in terms of what their timing looks like, their process looks like, and the delays that are caused by that. So this is a statewide test that's not efficient in the way that it runs. So when we look to hire, if we have an opening, we're basically being dictated to by the state as far as how that happens. A lot of the processes and the way that we would look to implement our new hiring processes or promotional processes in many ways mirror what civil service does. However, they're more efficient because we can process them internally and we can manage how that's going to look. So when officers currently are looking at a promotional process, again, it's being dictated by how civil service wants us to do things and then the delays and processes that take place because we're coming under their umbrella. When we're doing it internally, as we've discussed with the union, a lot of those practices and the way that it's happening and they're being assessed are similar, but we're able to do that now by hiring the assessment company and getting results directly rather than going through civil service and being stuck under their bureaucratic umbrella, so to speak. So the processes mirror that. They're still efficient in terms of how we're doing it, and we can increase the time it takes, or I'm sorry, decrease the time it takes to actually get folks into the position that we need to have filled.
Are there also...
Hey, do you have a second question?
I have a follow-up question. Are there also salary restrictions related to the civil service law? Is that part of what we're talking about?
No, there are no salary restrictions. That's all
Okay.
covered under collective bargaining. In terms of tests being taken, there would still be tests offered, or we could do lateral transfers as we do right now under civil service, and there would still be an assessment or testing process for promotions as well, so that would not go away.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chief. Further questions, further discussion? Gentleman in the middle, beat the lady to the mic. We'll hear from the gentleman in the middle first.
Brian Poitras, 66 Lawson Road. I only have one question. I think the Chief explained things very well, and I believe collective bargaining does address the issues that civil service did address at one time. But what about the age issue? Civil service has age restrictions, and I want to know if the town of Scituate will continue with the age restrictions so that we're not talking about hiring somebody 45 or 50 years old to a job that takes 30 years to get a pension.
Chief Thompson.
There would be no changes with regards to age restrictions.
Is that in collective bargaining?
It's not covered in collective bargaining right now, but we don't have an age restriction. We just have the 65 retirement age, which is what's been in place. That doesn't change.
I'm confused. You said there is no age restrictions.
There's no age restriction in terms of hiring.
From civil service?
Correct, that we're following under right now.
Okay, I don't agree with that, but if you say it, I'll take your word.
Thank you. Lady to my left.
Yes, Mary Ellen Schloss, 50 Manlot Road. I just wanted to understand a little bit more about your limitations in hiring with the civil service. Does the candidate have to live in Scituate, or is that just if they're a non-veteran? What are the restrictions, and can you give us an example of or describe with documentation on what kind of problems you've been having filling slots, how many slots are open that you haven't been able to fill, that kind of, just so we have a feeling of the problem that you're facing.
So for officers right now, once they're hired with the department, they're not required to live in the town. There's initially a 12-month period with civil service where they are required to be residents of the town. But a good example of what we'd be able to do with this change is we have young men and women who come to the high school here as METCO students. They're part of their community. They grow up in many ways within the community. Once they move on, and if they want to get involved in law enforcement in this particular case, they're not residents of Scituate, but yet they've become part of our community. This gives us the opportunity to have those students come back now as mature young men and women and be part of our community without having that residency restriction.
So can you tell us about the hiring issues that you're facing? Do we have many open slots that you've been unable to fill?
So we currently have 2 openings. We would like to look at some lateral transfers to come in. We've put it out to civil service departments to try to have people lateral transfer in. This gives you an opportunity to have experienced officers who have already been through the academy and who are vetted. We've gotten no response. But in discussions that we've had with surrounding communities that are non-civil service, we know there are people who want to come here but cannot transfer right now because we are a civil service department.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
One more question.
I just did
Ask
not-
as many questions as you want, one at a time.
Okay, I just did not understand the terminology. You said a lateral transfer. What, if you could just describe what that is? Thank you.
So a lateral transfer is essentially lateral transfer, right? So somebody who's an existing police officer with another department can transfer in, but if you are a civil service community, it has to be from a civil service to civil service community. One of the things that we're looking at, and just kind of to give you an idea of some numbers, and I think that both previous speakers had kind of touched on this. Prior to our coming here, there was a chiefs of police survey. 210 chiefs responded to the survey. Of those 210 representing departments, 60% of them are currently not within civil service. 40% remaining are in civil service. But of those 40% remaining, nearly half, 44% of them, are looking to leave civil service because of the problems that they're having with administrative, recruiting, and kind of bureaucratic processing issues. So as indicated before, this is not something that we're going out and doing on our own. This is very much where we're following other departments already are or in the process of going. Cohasset, Norwell, and Rockland have all recently come out. So when we look at what's happening around us as well, it will be non-civil service communities.
Thank you, Chief. There are further questions, further discussion on this article? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor of the motion to remove police officers, sergeants, and lieutenants in the police department from civil service, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. It's a majority vote. We will move now to Article 15, which is seawall funding. This is a petition article, and we would ask the petitioner to present the motion.
My name is William Hegrick, and I live on Benjamin Lane here in Scituate. I move the town appropriate $7 million for the purpose of rebuilding the seawall beginning in front of 181 Turner Road, going southeasterly to 3 Rebecca Road, and to repair the existing seawall across the street from 6 Rebecca Road to 14 Rebecca Road, and further to authorize the treasurer with the approval of the select board to borrow said sum.
We have the motion. Do we have a second? I think I heard a second. We have a second. Motion has made and seconded. We will ask for a presentation from the petitioner.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Does the seawall need to be rebuilt? Well, if you notice the photographs in the lobby when you came in, or the brochures that we handed out, you'll see that the condition at present, how poor it is. There are sections of the concrete literally falling off and exposing the core, which is 120 years old. Also, the rebar reinforcement is exposed. The majority of this deterioration has happened in the last 2 years. The wall is in a complete state of failure and not likely to survive the next major storm. Who owns this wall? A little history here. The wall was built 120 years ago after a major coastal storm in 1898 broke through the same area that we are talking about today. This storm broke through this neck It submerged the entire Front Street business district in 3 feet of water. It also separated Hummerock from the Scituate proper, and it changed the course of the North River to the present-day inlet. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts determined that the only way to protect this harbor was to construct a seawall, which they did in 1901. In 1931, the Plymouth County and town paid for the major restoration, and in 1972, the Army Corps of Engineers did the last major work on this wall. Time and fact. We are requesting that the voters approve this $7 million. This is based on similar seawall projects that the town has recently participated in adding inflation to this number. This is 570 feet of the section in danger of collapse and will allow the most severe damage to the town businesses, harbor infrastructure, access not only to our lighthouse, but access possible, potentially emergency access to First Cliff as well. We have been in contact with various legislators, state and federal, who have made it quite clear that the town has to participate in this process to open up the possibility for state grants from the Mass State Dam and Seawall Fund. This has to be done now. All applications have to be in very early next year, and it is before our next annual meeting. What if we don't? Well, if this wall fails, we have problems with the town infrastructure that supports our fishing industry, investments by all yacht clubs and marinas, the future town park, flooding that will jeopardize all Front Street businesses and homes along Jericho Road, possibility of cutting off emergency access to First Cliff, cutting off access to the Lighthouse Point, the potential damage to the pumping station in Sand Hills, and the recent millions of dollars spent along Lighthouse to complete the water, sewer, and road work, rebuilding both the road and the park. What about the impact of the neighborhood? What about the tax base to the town? What about the time needed to repair all of this stuff if it goes? So tonight, we're going to hear it can wait. No matter how much money you throw at it, it ain't going to be built any sooner. Well, we disagree. They want to follow the existing timetable already in place. That's years away. And the town has received other money that they can't spend due to permitting issues. There's nothing to do with the permitting issues of other problems. The negative list grows while the last 6 years the wall has deteriorated to the point of total failure. Some members of our town committee met us at the wall, all uttered the same thing. I had no idea it's that bad. Some even refused to walk on the wall to inspect it. Last Thursday, our little group met with the town officials, state and federal representatives, and the Army Corps of Engineers. Due to the federal regulations, the Army Corps will not and cannot help this town in any way in rebuilding that wall. It's all on us. So the only responsible course of action we are asking is to be proactive, to protect our two most important assets, our harbor and lighthouse. So please think about it and vote yes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask for a recommendation from the advisory committee? Ms. Metro.
Yep. Hi, Patrice Metro for the advisory. So, as the gentleman just described, members of the advisory committee did observe the wall, and we listened to the petitioner's concerns. It was clear that there are large parts of the wall where concrete is deteriorating, and we could all understand their worry that the wall might be breached in a storm, and the result might be an overspill, which could cut off access to Lighthouse Point and possibly threaten the harbor as well. The petitioners estimated the total cost of rebuilding one wall and repairing the other based on an earlier published cost of the oceanside seawall. They further suggested that if the town citizens were to vote for a $7 million appropriation, applications for grants and/or other state and federal funding would be more favorably considered. The advisory committee shares the petitioner's frustration with the time it takes for seawall decisions, rebuilds, and repairs, and for what appears to be the bureaucratic quagmire impeding decisions. However, the town has an ordered work plan to address the condition of all the town's seawalls, and was in the process of working through rebuilds and repairs as funding and permits became available. The town had started with Worcester area and Oceanside, which protects the sewer pump station, which supports 40% of users, and had been moving down that section until permitting requirements changed. The Oceanside project is fully designed and has a $6 million grant, but it can't go out to bid because of permitting issues. Multiple coastal projects statewide are stalled. The town's plan had been to stop at the end of Oceanside, and then the Army Corps of Engineers would take on from there. The town is continuing talks with the Army Corps, and I think maybe that's going to be discussed in a minute. Meanwhile, the town has retained a consultant to pursue other federal grants and file applications for Lighthouse Point. If the Army Corps pulls out, the town can move forward and could use the $2 million previously agreed at town meeting to start the design, engineering, and permitting of that section. The design work will take at least a year, and again, there is the problem still of the state permitting. Easements would also be required from the residents. While the petitioners believe their $7 million request will be adequate, it appears that the Army Corps of Engineers has calculated a cost to be much higher. If it takes on the project, it would only build the wall to their design, which at the moment was 4 feet higher. If the town were to do the full section, which would not necessarily have to follow the Corps design, there would have to be a debt exclusion, and it will require town meeting approval. The petitioners argued that a $7 million approval at town meeting would improve chances of obtaining further funding, but the town has not been able to spend the $2 million previously voted or the $6 million the town had obtained in grant funding. It's very unlikely that any applications for further funding would be successful when the town hasn't been able to spend either that $6 million grant or the $2 million. The town has armor stone located nearby that can be used to ameliorate a break if one were to happen at these Lighthouse Road seawalls. The town has a well-developed and often used plan for the evacuation of Lighthouse Point and other residents in advance of threats to their safety and that of the emergency responders. Therefore, the advisory committee does not support the article. We believe the town staff should continue to work through their existing plans for seawall replacement and repairs, proceed with efforts with the Army Corps and state permitting, and when needed, recommend further courses of action to accomplish essential work. We don't recommend approval of the article, and we had a unanimous vote of 0 to 8 against it.
Thank you. I'd like to hear next from the Board of Selectmen. Ms. Curran, the Select Board.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I hope everyone sees the stretch of walls that are in the back of the advisory board. I think it's really a great photo, if you will, to really understand the work that has been done and continues to be done. And this is a very, very challenging project. All of our seawalls are, as you can hear, with the $6 million sitting there stuck in the permitting process. So as a body, the Select Board is equally as frustrated by the process that we are all subjected to in order to conduct these repairs. But the proposal before you today from the petitioners only addresses a very small portion that is at risk, and it has always been advised to us by engineers, CZM, that when we go to take care of a seawall issue, that we take care of the entire stretch or as much as possible, that we do that rebuilding in the most comprehensive and best way. The cost of rebuilding this section of the seawall, the larger section, not the smaller one that's being proposed today, has been estimated to be at $30 million in today's dollars. And this part of the seawall, as noted before, was built by the Army Corps of Engineers, so the town has been pursuing that avenue to repair it since 2018. Yeah, frustrating, it's 2023. We understand. However, last week, the most recent meeting following our Select Board meeting, there was another joint call, as mentioned, with federal, state, and the Army Corps, and as it was expressed that all of the current proposed damage that has been assessed did not meet their requirements of the program that they were looking for. But they did recommend that we now pursue other routes. The Army Corps suggested pursuing a general investigation which requires congressional approval and does not have a cap on the funding. The current process had a $10 million cap, and the total project is 30, so you can see our quagmire. However, this particular process, the general investigation, would still take 5 to 7 years to get to the point of design, permitting, appropriation, and then construction. Even if we approve this $7 million that has been unidentified today, that doesn't mean that we can fix it and start fixing it tomorrow. However, as mentioned, there is $2 million that was appropriated previous town meetings through an authorization to use for foreshore protection that we can put on the Select Board agenda to start going through the design process on our own while we can continue to pursue this other federal path in addition to additional state funds. We are also in contact with Senator Markey's office, who has identified $5.5 million through other channels, not the Army Corps, because they are incredibly frustrating to us all, to get those dollars through us through the MEMA system. So we would gladly accept that $5.5 million, Senator Markey, so we continue to leverage that. So it's not that the town is not prioritizing this section of the seawall. I think if you really listen and speak to the department, it's so frustrating to all of us. We are. We're exhausting all funding sources to assist to help pay for the rebuilding of it. If we don't, it'll cost the taxpayers $30 million in a debt exclusion override. Not really sure that's what you want, given what is before us in the upcoming year with the water treatment plant in addition to a new school building. It's a lot of debt. It's fiscally responsible to pursue additional funding sources. We're committed to moving this along and are sincerely empathetic to the residents' requests. We get it, we've been down there, we've walked that wall, we understand. However, voting to approve this article will only place more dollars and encumber us to more debt without any funding to pay for the debt identified. And furthermore, approval of this article will not, unfortunately, move it any faster. So the board voted 4-1 not to support this article as written.
Thank you. We will now move to discussion of the article. The gentleman on my left.
Scott Greenbaum, 40 Damon Road. I have two questions. One, I know when I was on conservation that the ownership of this section was in doubt. Has the ownership been positively identified as being Army Corps of Engineers, State of Commonwealth, town, or is it, as at that time, some of it was private? The second question is, I'm a little disappointed. One of the things that held up the big section that was done was the easements. I think part of what's holding up, I've heard the section that's being held up is not just permitting, but the easements for public right-of-ways. If this group of petitioners wanted this done, they should have presented the town with, have they presented the town with all the easements so that the town employees don't have to go through the process of finding out and finding that there's one missing and they can't do the work anyway. So that's, I'd like to know those two answers.
Okay, I'm going to ask for the town to respond to this first, since I think this is knowledge that the administration would have. You'll certainly get a chance to chime in.
So in response to your first question, the ownership of the wall is actually not relevant. It is the responsibility of the town to fix it. The state and federal government have walked away. They won't do it. So if it's going to be fixed, it is going to be on us. In terms of easements, the current project is not being held up by easements. We have the easements we need for the work on Oceanside Drive to go. That is being held up by a state agency called Coastal Zone Management, which now wants us to do very expensive beach nourishment. So they are holding up that permit, and also a $5 million state grant. That'll be required on this part. We will easements on this property, because even if they don't own the wall, they will own up to the wall, and we will need to get into there to make those repairs. So we will need easements to do the construction. That is correct.
But the easements have not were not presented to you with
We
this
do not have the
petition.
easements at this point that I'm aware of, no.
So therefore, if one property owner decided that they weren't going to give the easement,
We do have a section, if you look at your handout, you'll see there's a section of wall that was not done because we were not able to receive easements. I don't think that'll be a huge issue on this portion of the seawall. I think the people will give them to us. But again, one of the real expensive things about this part of the wall, and why we went with the Army Corps to begin with, we'd hoped that the Army Corps, because they're under federal regulations where we're under state regulations, would be able to construct the new wall in front of the old wall. Because the houses are so close, those are all going to have to be sheet piled and held up and driven, really driving up the cost. The Army Corps looked at that and said, really, it's not feasible, so we'll have to replace the wall where it is, and that gets very expensive because of the proximity of the houses, not only in this section, but along that whole section of wall. Makes it very expensive. So we will need easements for construction, and those will be permanent easements for access for repair and maintenance.
All right. Thank you. Petitioner have anything they want to say on this particular issue? Sir?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any comments on those two questions? Just trying to, okay, thank you. Next speaker is gentleman to my right.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. David Ball, 44 Rebecca Road. I just want to address the easement question that was just asked. All of the abutters to the wall have signed what's called an intent to sign the easement. They're not going to sign the easements until the work is ready to begin. It was the neighborhood that got those signed intents to the town. The town has them on their file right now. So that has been done. The advisory committee's booklet stated that difficulty in getting state permits to do the work is one of their big concerns. And getting state permits is an issue, there's no question about it. However, one of their comments kind of says it all in the booklet. It is very unlikely that any applications for further funding will be successful. We absolutely disagree with that. We think it's going to be very doable. A neighborhood can approach this with the state in a different way than the town can. We told the select board when we met with them in August that if we had to, we'd get the governor to come down here. And that's what our intent will be. If that's what it's looking like, that's what we'll do. So the select board gave the same kind of comments that the advisory committee just gave you. I'm just going to read you a little bit of my comments here. This section of seawall is now in a state of extreme deterioration. Doing nothing to begin the process of rebuilding this wall is not responsible. It is inviting a disaster. If the wall fails before it is rebuilt, damage in a major coastal storm will cause horrific damage in the Harbor Business District along Jericho Road, parts of Sand Hills, and the Cedar Point Lighthouse neighborhood. The strategy of our article is simple. Pass the money that's requested tonight. It's not going to be spent until the work actually begins. But by having that money in place, the state will have to certainly take a very different look at Scituate's application than some of the past applications, because the money will have been appropriated tonight. So we believe that this is the strategy to use. We know that the Dam and Seawall Fund applications must be turned in to the state very early next year. The state has confirmed that to us. We told the Select Board that very fact when we met with them. So, one final thought. This seawall protects the only access to the lighthouse in that whole neighborhood. The lighthouse is visited by at least 75,000 people every year. Just imagine the wall collapsing. You wouldn't be able to get out there very easily. It's not a responsible way to go about this. We absolutely need this vote tonight, and I hope that everybody sees it that way and will vote yes. It takes a 2/3 vote, so it's important that we get the support that we need. I think there's going to be somebody that's going to get up to the microphone right now and talk about the safety issue and the problems of first responders and all that. So I'm going to give it to him. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boudreau, Town Administrator.
Yeah, I'd just like to address a couple of Mr. Ball's comments. First of all, no one is suggesting that we do nothing. The town has a $2 million authorization for seawalls currently that we can use to start the design portion. The dam and seawall has two types of grants, design grants and construction grants. We already have, as I said, a $2 million authorization, which would be the town's match to apply for the design grant. We cannot apply for the construction grant because we have nothing to construct. This has not been permitted yet. You must have a designed and permitted project in order to apply to dam and seawall for construction money. It will take most likely a year to design this seawall. It will take at least a year on top of that. If we are lucky, and Mr. Ball, as he said, has some pull with the state on these permitting to get it permitted. The state permitting is so bad at this point that the Army Corps of Engineers actually commented on it, that we have a hard time doing stuff in Massachusetts because of an agency called Coastal Zone Management. So if we vote for this tonight, that $7 million authorization will sit there. It will not move this project any faster. The board will now have a decision to make, most likely at the next meeting, to abandon the Army Corps 103 project, which is their maintenance fund. They can put up $10 million. This is a $30 million project. There are several issues with that. One, our damage estimates do not rise to the level that they wish us to rise. A happy thought, the Army Corps believes that if the seawall breaches, the issue would require further study. Current analysis indicates the majority of vulnerability to Scituate Harbor is through the existing inlet, and that a seawall failure breach scenario would not be a significant increase to the existing vulnerability. What does that mean? If the storm's really bad, we're in trouble either way. Okay? This article, we are looking at the seawall. We have spent $250,000 already with the Army Corps on this. The board, as I said, can take up a vote at their next meeting to stop the Army Corps 103 project and move forward with our own design of that seawall. We have the authorization to do that. We will recommend that to them. We will still, as Morris said, pursue the federal direct authorization through Congress. Senator Markey's office has filed that. It was due on Friday. They sent us frantic emails. We got the application in Friday afternoon. Best case scenario, 5 to 7 years before starting construction. Under the Army Corps' world, that's fast-tracked. So we will move on this project as soon as the next meeting when the board gives a DPW authorization to go out to bid and get an engineer in here to start designing it. So I don't want people to think that the town has abandoned this, the town is not doing it, the town is not concerned. We have a plan, we are following that plan, and we will continue that until we get this seawall done.
Thank you. Next, we have the gentleman at the center mic.
Hi, Matthew Dibb, 166 Old Oak and Bucket. As was just mentioned, it sounds like we're looking at potentially a 5 to 7 year project. Is there something that can be done in the interim as a kind of stopgap? Because, you know, even if we start the project, we're looking at years to get the wall repaired, and potentially some big storm could come and hit us. So what can we do in the meanwhile is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, we'll look at whether we can make repairs out there. We will still need easements to make repairs because especially in the Lighthouse Road section, it's very narrow, the houses are very close up, the decks go all the way up to those seawalls, so we'll need easements for those to get in there just to do the repair work. That's an ongoing discussion. We can use some of that $2 million to do that. I know the engineering department has started looking at some of those things, but we'll need to bring a consultant in on that. But in some of those cases, the decks will have to be removed in order for us to get to the seawall. And then the question is, well, do we put the deck back? No, we're going to come in a couple of years and rebuild the seawall. So there's a lot of different issues in there, but the engineering department is right now looking and discussing with various vendors things we might be able to do some stabilization. It's not just as simple though as going out and slapping some concrete on it.
Okay, so short-term, just to clarify, the short-term stabilization plans are limited because of the proximity of the property to the shoreline.
It just makes it difficult to get in and actually do the work. There's not a lot of room to get in there with vehicles, trucks, and things like that, so it'd have to be carefully planned. But again, it's a lot more complicated than just going out and patching the wall with concrete. So we'd have to get some engineers out there to take a look at that. And our engineering department's looking at it, and if we start moving forward, we'll have the engineering firm that's going to design the new wall looking at some fixes also.
Thank you.
Gentleman to my right.
Frank Kilduff, 125 Chief Justice Cushing Highway. I think the town meeting, all of you here need to look at this from the point of view that, yes, there's a problem, there's a risk, there's potential for a very bad outcome. And in fact, this is not likely to be the only time that this issue is going to come up because we have a lot of shoreline and a lot of things happening. On the other hand, the question is this article the appropriate way to approach this problem when the very people who've been involved working with it are clearly quite educated about how the process works, are saying to us, this isn't the way to go, this isn't the way to decide, and it won't be appropriate for us to just throw money this way when they're telling us, no, it's not the way to go. So I'd urge everybody to think about that before they vote on this, because voting for it sounds like it'll throw a monkey wrench into the process rather than helping it. Thanks.
Thank you. Gentleman to my left.
My name's William Hoover. I live on 34 Lighthouse Road. What I'd like to bring to your attention is the total amount of dollars that have been invested in Lighthouse Point over the period of the last several years. Major repairs, installation of the new sewer line, $6.4 million approximately, installation of the new water line, $1 million, restoration of the Lighthouse Lantern Room, $2 million, construction of the public park on Jericho Road, $9 million. That's $10 million that were invested. And if that wall breaches, all of that investment is gone, and you're going to have to replace that as well. So please vote yes for rebuilding the seawall tonight.
Next gentleman on my left.
My name's Connor Doherty, 603 Country Way. Previously served on the Beach Commission. I currently sit on the advisory committee, but I stand at this microphone in my capacity just as a resident, and that alone. I first walked this wall and took a lot of pictures of it over a year ago, and about 1 year from that date, I did it again, and was quite shocked at how different my pictures were. Large chunks of concrete missing. And when I first heard about this, I thought, this is a no-brainer. We have to spend this money. This thing is falling apart. And it seemed to me there was no downside. Why wouldn't we say, let's set aside $7 million for this? But appropriating $7 million does have a downside. It affects the town's credit. It affects our ability to borrow. And we could have $50 million sitting in the fund today. We still can't do anything with the seawall. What is holding up the process is the state permitting process. To get around state permitting, you can use the Army Corps of Engineers or earmarks at the federal level. So what I've done and what I encourage everyone in town to do who cares about this, email Governor Healy's office, tell her that we want the seawall done proactively, not reactively after a disaster, and to help push forward the Massachusetts state permitting process. Email Senator Markey's office, tell him that we would need an earmark, that this is vital to our economy. But us appropriating money here tonight does nothing to expedite the process of rebuilding this wall. Thank you.
Thank you. Lady to my left.
Yes, I just, Mary Ellen Schloss, 50 Manlot Road. I want to just reiterate what the other speakers have said. You know, obviously that seawall is in terrible shape, but I think this money, we're not going to be able to construct it without permitting, like everybody says. I've worked in local government in permitting. I know how that works. It is extremely frustrating, but just putting the money in aside is not going to help us. And I'm just concerned because we're a coastal community. We've got, you know, climate change, you know, sea levels rising, increased intensity of storms. We've got to deal with the whole coastline in a very measured way, and we've got a lot of difficulties ahead of us, and I just want to make sure that we all do it with intelligence and foresight and planning, so that's all.
Thank you. Gentleman to my right.
Good evening. My name is John Murphy, 105 Turner Road. I'm the former fire chief and emergency management director. I do live in the flood zone, and I don't think anybody understands if they live outside the flood zone that the anxiety and the grief and the destruction that these storms do. So I'm going to just paint you a picture of a storm in 2010. You're probably all familiar with it. It had a lot of visibility. But our number one priority for these storms is to make sure nobody gets hurt or killed. No first responders and no residents. And our number 1 and 2 challenges are seawall breaches and fires. We saw what happened in Hawaii. I'm not saying that could happen in Scituate. I'm not saying it couldn't. But right now, these seawall breaches are not merely splash over. So I'm going to give you a little, paint a little picture. In 2010, we were expecting a minor to maybe moderate storm. It did increase in intensity. It was the day after Christmas. That evening, we encountered a 60-foot seawall breach just where Oceanside and Turner meet, down by just south of the Oceanside Bed and Breakfast. Within probably 30 minutes, we had massive flooding. We had to do 9 rescues with a front-end loader. 2 firefighters in ice rescue suits and a front-end loader going through 5 to 6 feet of water, pulling up to the deck. The family getting, the pets getting in, 60-mile-an-hour winds, and you don't know what's under the water there. We all see what's under there when the tide goes out, but there's debris there. It's a miracle that nobody was killed in those 9 rescues. At times, the DPW driver, his feet on the pedals were in water. That's how deep we're dealing with. This is not splash over. This is my biggest fear when I was chief, and now Mark Donovan, the new chief, he's got the car, and it's going to be his biggest fear. If that seawall breaches, it's a game changer. So following those 9 rescues, we had to open up an immediate shelter at the high school. We had 175 people there for several days. Now we move up to 7th Avenue, and we had massive arcing on a house. Long story short, we had 2 houses fully involved. We evacuated all the street prior to that in case this happened. We couldn't get access to this area, only by boat. We had to evacuate these people by boat, and fortunately we did, because soon after, we lost 2 homes immediately, and you saw all the pictures of the guys in ice rescue suits up to their necks in water. Very dangerous operations. You don't know what's in the water, the primary wires, debris. I mean, you've seen some of these rocks that come over, they're the size of watermelons. So it's not mere splash over. I'm not saying that, this is the end all, we got to do this, but we got to make this a priority. From mining down to, and we've talked about this, the last seawall we got done is 2017. We have to get this done. We can't wait 5 to 7 years. That wall's not going to last. And I'm telling you, it's a game changer. It's life-threatening when we get a seawall breach. Thank you.
Lady at the center microphone.
Ann Burbine, 10 Pennycrest Road. And no, I'm not here to move the question. Okay? My concern is, having lived in this town for half a century, I have seen Front Street flooded more than once, under several feet of water. I remember Coombe Shoe, whenever there was a nor'easter, they had to put sandbags in the front door to keep the water out. I worked at the Welsh Company, and we had to move up to Allen Street in order to save our vehicles. This flooding is nothing new. And once upon a time, Rick Murray, who used to be on the Board of Select Board, basically said, and I have to say I agree with him, and I fully understand what Chief Murphy is saying in terms of a breach. However, when water splashes over, it has nowhere to go. And it becomes higher and higher and higher. And I remember years ago seeing a film from CZM about living on the coast. The people who had money back then, the fishermen, the owners of the boats, they lived up in Norwell on River Street, where they never would have been flooded. The poor people lived on Cedar Point. Those were little cottages that every April people swept out the sand and moved in for the summer. Things changed back in the 60s and early 70s. People moved into them for whatever reason I will not mention. Thanks to the storm of 78, thanks to the storm of 91, many of those houses are now monuments to insurance. They cost a fortune to repair, and all of us are paying the price. Anyone, to live on the ocean, we do at our own peril. And yet someday in Bulrush Farm, I may be flooded out too. That's life. There's a house on Oceanside that has been replaced 11 times. Repetitive loss. There reaches a point, I understand, that it takes time to do this stuff. We've been trying to get 3A from Schofield Road to Henry Turner Bailey Road replaced, and it's been 7 years. Anything with the state government can take an average of 10 to 20 years. It's amazing we won World War II. We just can't seem to get anything done in a timely fashion. I know it is not popular, but I'm going to say this. Please do not vote for this $7 million. It makes absolutely no sense. It's not going to help. It may hinder. The town is working the best way it can to ensure safety for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my right. I'll get to you.
Good evening, Steve Burlow, 183 Turner Road. I've been in that neighborhood along the beach there for over 35 years. The gentleman prior that spoke about what happened in a year, it's happening weekly, watching that seawall deteriorate. In 2009, I was appointed to the seawall committee that the select board put together. Joe Norton appointed me to that board. So from then on, I've been involved with monitoring Sand Hill seawall, Minot, Hummerock, we went up and down the coast. That was the purpose of our committee, was to monitor the seawall, especially after storms, to see the condition that they were in. For about 5 or 6 years after 2010, the Turner Road, Lighthouse Road seawall really started to show its age. In 2010, I took samples. I'm in the concrete business. I have been for too long. But I sent samples, or took samples, they were so fragile, to credible testing labs in Boston. The concrete was so bad, they couldn't test it. They typically either core a concrete structure, take the core sample and test it. You could not core that seawall once it opened up. So I took the samples, and then they would cut it into the shape they needed to test it. They couldn't cut it. The concrete was crumbling. That was in 2010. And it's not getting any better, and it's getting a lot worse. So you're talking tonight 5, 6, 7 years before this could even get off the ground. We don't have that time. And if we don't do something, whether it's a new wall or do some maintenance, which is long overdue, then, like Chief said, that whole section, and I've watched first responders go in and out of there on storms, and you don't want to be one of them. And you don't want to be stuck out there as a resident and try to get out. We hear, you know, splash over, splash over. Those aren't splashovers. And if there's nothing there to stop that, then it's a river. It's not a splashover. So if we don't do the $7 million, I hope the town steps up and does something, because it's going to be nasty if that wall goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Lady to my left.
Hi, I'm Erin Hurd. I'm 68 Gilson Road. I have just 2 comments. My first one was, Mr. Boudreau, I think you said something about the Army Corps saying if that neck breaches, that won't be detrimental to the harbor, or that was their assessment. But we know that that's inaccurate, because 100 years ago, that neck was broken and left the harbor under 3 feet of water. That all the historical documents show that. So if that wall does breach, the harbor is absolutely going to flood in a very, very significant way. The other thing I wanted to say about the $7 million, I hear you, there is money on the side, we've made the allotments, but what the $7 million also is, it's a commitment to the people of this town. This wall has been neglected for decades. Nobody has done anything. It's been sitting there. It's been rotting underneath us. So it's a commitment to this town that you take this seriously, and we are going to move this project forward in an expedited manner, not 10 years now. It is also a commitment to the state and federal leaders that the town takes this seriously, that we're putting up $7 million because we mean business and we need people to address this right away. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boudreau.
To clarify, I did not say that if it breached, it would not flood the harbor. What the Army Corps said is it's going to flood anyways, whether there's a breach or not, because it'll flood right down through the harbor entrance. So the harbor is vulnerable to flooding no matter what we do, and we are having a group right now look at resiliency in the harbor to stop some of that flooding. No one said we don't want to do anything. No one said we're not going to do anything now. The 5 to 7 years is if we pursue that congressional direct funding, but as I said, the board will take up at their next meeting using the $2 million to start that project. It's still 2 years at our fastest that we can go. Okay? Chief Murphy talked about what happens when it floods, what happens when it's been cut off. This is not the only area of town we have those issues. Hummerock is so bad that we stationed 2 firefighters on 4th Cliff during a storm. In 2018, we had a piece of seawall break at 81 Surfside. We had a piece of seawall break near the old inn on Oceanside Drive. We had 10 to 12 feet of debris on Central Ave that took us 4 days to get through. We lost 45 feet of 4th Cliff, including a water main break, and we had to send water department employees on small ATVs along the beach in order to get up to the cliff to shut off the water. It's not unique, but Cedar Point is the next project on the board's list. In 2019, we got a call from the residents in Hummerock that the little park at the end of the Hummerock seawall was gone. Where did it go? The seawall was undermined and the tide was pulling all the soil from behind the seawall, causing the collapse of that park. This is not unique to Cedar Point, but Cedar Point is next. We had a plan, we've been following that plan. We have $2 million to move that plan forward. Whether you vote for the $7 million or not, I just would like to be clear at the risk of beating a dead horse once again. That $7 million will not move this project any faster than we can move it. We will now shift to the town project and move it as quickly as we can. It will not be as fast as we like, and we will have to look at making repairs, but we will move it as quickly as we can with the funds available. And then, when we have an idea what this is going to cost and what we're going to get from our state and federal partners, we will come back to town meeting and ask for the funds needed to complete the project. That is the plan that we are laying before the board. That is the plan that I'm 900% certain the board's going to get behind and move forward. So please be aware, if this passes, it will not move this project up any faster than the board is going to try to move it.
Thank you. Gentleman on my left. You're on my left, sir.
George Simmons, 73 Lighthouse Road. I love town meeting. It gives us a chance for the citizens to inject common sense into some big problems that the town faces. The seawall needs to be rebuilt now. You've heard that from everyone here. You've heard it from everyone who's touched a wall, who's put their hand in there and just pulled out cobble because there's no concrete left. Okay, look at the pictures. The Army Corps of Engineers said, we're out. We're not doing this project. So the town needs to act. That's why we're all here tonight. We need to get some action from the town. Let's commit the money. The $2 million that you talk about, that's been sitting there for years and it's never been used until we talk about it tonight. So let's fund the project. Where did the $7 million cost come from? We simply took the town data that's in the capital plan, we divided it out into a cost per linear foot, and we calculated 571 feet, and we came up with $7 million. It's not a crazy number, it's a realistic number, and we used town data to determine it. In World War II, General Patton was famously quoted as saying, listen, everybody, we could have a choice. We can either take a good plan, well executed today, or maybe we might do the perfect plan executed 2 weeks from now. General Patton always went with, let's do the plan that needs to happen today. I encourage your vote. Let's vote the $7 million. Let's get it in place. We don't want to be coming back here 2-3 years from now. Let's get this project done. Thank you.
Lady at the center mic. Ma'am, you're next.
Thank you. Good evening, Mary Ann Lewis, Noel Ave, Scituate. For all the articulated reasons, I would urge everyone to vote in favor of this article, but I got up to just make a point of clarification in terms of what a speaker who preceded me mentioned about insurance monuments. Anyone that lives in a flood zone or has property in a flood zone pays a significant increase in insurance premiums to have that property additionally insured as required by most mortgage lenders. Whether your property is assessed at $300,000 or $3 million, the most you can recover under a FEMA insurance claim is $250,000. So many people that are assessed at high property values, way beyond that $250,000, that pay a lot of money in property taxes as well, can only ever recover under that program $250,000. In most cases, a fraction of what they're being assessed at. Thank you.
Thank you. Lady on my right.
Laurie Ball, 17 Fay Road. My question is, what year was the $2 million allocated, and how long has it been sitting there, and why hasn't anything been done with that money until now?
Can we, Ms. Holt?
The $2 million was allocated at a town meeting in 2015, and it's never been used for any purpose because it was not voted for any purpose. It was a citizen's petition that did not speak to any particular project.
Thank you. Gentleman to my left.
Thank you. Good evening. Brian Nelson, Dickens Row. I think we've heard a lot from a lot of folks today on recognizing that improving the seawalls across the town are very important. I think there's a lot of agreement there. And what I'm hearing is the main impediment is really a process issue and not a safety issue, right? The safety issue is there. It's a process issue to get it to where it needs to be. So my question's for the petitioner, if you'd like to maybe address that a little bit more, and why do you think this plan is going to move the permitting process at either the federal or the state, or I think not, but the Army Corps of Engineers, I think your design is to go around that. But if you could talk to why the $7 million gets us where we all want to be faster than the plan that the executive branch has put forth. Thank you.
Have a response on behalf of the petitioner.
I think...
your name again, please. Just repeat your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. William Hegrick, and where do I live? Benjamin Lane. George, do you want to answer that question, why we want the $7 million now? We've mentioned it a number of times that it's going to, that's what the state is, the state, and I may be wrong, but the state and federal legislation says you have to participate in this as a town now. Am I wrong, George?
Hold on.
You have to do it.
Hold on. Hold it. We're not going to have a back and forth. If you have something to say, say it, and then we'll go to another speaker who might give another answer.
Sorry. As we've been informed numerous times, because we as a committee have been talking to the state and federal legislators for years. So because of that, and it was in the meeting that we also had here on Thursday, the feds aren't helping us. We have to help ourselves. And in order to get any funding from the dam and seawall fund or any other fund in this state, we now have to participate in that financially. So that's why we are requesting the money now. If we wait, who's going to petition this? No one's done this in years. This is falling apart. Now it's a crisis. This thing is going to crumble, and it isn't just our little neck that's going to crumble in those houses. It's the town that's potentially could be affected by this. It has. In 1898, it broke through that same area, flooded the town, and destroyed that whole area. It's going to do it again. And it's not just a spillover, it's the waves that are going to come in. It's the river that's going to come in through that neck, take out all that infrastructure that's just been put in there, millions of dollars to put in there to revise that whole area. It's going to be gone. Potentially. So in order to get any funding, we have to participate as a town now and get the permits now. And if you wait to the town meeting to vote it in again or whatever we're going to do, it's too late for next year. So how many years are you going to add on to that after it? That's why it's important now. We've been through so many meetings you cannot imagine, and we've talked to all of the legislation that you ever want to talk to, and they all say the same thing. We have to do it ourselves. They're not helping, and if we don't help ourselves, they're not going to approve anything. That's my answer.
Gentleman on my right.
William Graham, 14 Tilden Ave. I move the question.
We have a motion to move the question. The effect of this motion is to cut off debate. Requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye. Those opposed, no. I declare it a 2/3 vote. Question has been called. There'll be no further debate. We'll move to a vote on the question. Again, what you have before you is to appropriate $7 million and authorize borrowing of $7 million for the sections of the seawall identified in the article. This requires a 2/3 vote. I ask all those in favor to say aye. Those opposed to say no. Okay, let's try this. All those in favor, please stand.
I'm concerned about this stand because I'm afraid some people are going to shift in.
Yeah, I'd also like to see your green cards, please. Okay, those opposed,
No green cards over there.
please stand and show us your green cards. I don't think it has 2/3, but I'm going to ask the tellers to count. I think we have to count it.
Yeah. But they have to count green cards. There's a couple people.
Okay, if the tellers could come forward. Everyone has to be seated in order for their vote to count, so those who are standing in the back of the room, please find a seat.
Still checking in.
Yeah, you want to do a shot?
No, this guy wasn't checked in. So
Oh, I think we're okay.
they're checking in now.
All right. Okay, I'm going to ask, let's count the votes in favor. All those in favor of the appropriation and the borrowing authorization, say aye. All those in favor, raise your green cards. And we'll have a count. Please keep your hands up until we tell you we're done. Tellers all set with the count? Right rear.
Floor.
Floor.
Kathy?
Right rear is 17.
Right center floor, Mr. Dempsey. 22. Right front floor, including the advisory committee and school committee.
6.
Left rear bleachers, Ms. Breen.
31.
3-1.
31. 3-1.
Thank you. Mr. Toppin, left front bleacher. 2. Left rear floor.
Keeley.
2-6. Left center floor.
13.
And left front floor, including the I'm not voting, including the selectmen and the registrars.
Which? Okay.
Thank you. Ask now those opposed, please stand and hold up, or please hold up your green card. Okay, I think you can put everyone done with the count? Okay, just take a minute. Okay, we'll start again with the right rear bleachers.
10.
Right front bleachers. Right rear floor.
13.
1-3.
1-3.
Right center floor.
8.
8. Right front floor, including advisory committee and school committee.
21. 2-1.
Left right bleacher. Left rear bleacher, that is.
6.
Left front bleacher. 4. Left rear floor. 12. Left center floor.
12.
Left front floor, including the selectmen and the registrars.
17.
Okay, it's going to take a minute here to do the count. All right, we have 165 votes in favor, 113 opposed. That gives us a majority vote of only 59.4%, which is not two-thirds. The motion fails. Move now to Article 16. We have a petitioner for Article 16 with a motion. Lady at the center, Mike.
Hi, my name is Sandy Allen. I live at 170 Old Oaken Bucket. I know you're all tired, but if you would refer to the purple handout sheet and the very last page of the advisory board booklet, it talks about I'm talking about the language in bylaw section 30460A. This is very simple. No owner or keeper of a dog shall permit said dog in any street, including public or private ways, without the express permission of the owner or occupant of such property. I don't know if I should read what I'm deleting first.
Yes, just read it just as it is on the sheet that was handed out.
Okay. The bylaw states, without such dog being effectively restrained by chain or leash, which chain or leash shall be under the direct and positive control of such owner or other person. I'm deleting that, I'm moving that we delete that sentence and that we insert without such dog being leash chained or otherwise under direct and positive control of owner or handler by effective voice command or effective e-collar command. Such control and command must ensure that such dog does not cause or has not caused a disruption dangerous to another dog, other dogs, or human in the area. Now,
Thank you. Is that the motion?
that's the motion.
Do we have a second to the motion? Motion is seconded. Now we can hear from the petitioner. Go ahead.
If you refer to the second paragraph on the very last page of this booklet, it states the fines for if someone is, I'll say, caught without their dog on a leash. The first fine within a calendar year is $50. The second fine is $100. The third fine is $300. And beyond that, it shall be $500 in a calendar year. Now, that apparently is by order of the state, so we can't do anything about that. But the reason this petition is called discretion in law enforcement is because when there have been a number of complaints to the town about people with their dogs off leash, the law enforcement, the animal control officer has gone out and given tickets for $50, $100 to various people, whether or not their dog has caused or is causing dangerous disruption. Therefore, if we could change the language, it might be more compatible with the people who are on the trail most of the time. If anybody has any questions, I'm very happy to try to answer.
Okay, next we're going to ask for the recommendation of the advisory committee. Mr. McRegan?
Hello again, Dana McGuigan, Advisory Committee. The committee spent a considerable amount of time engaged in discussion with the petitioner of this article and was presented to us. The committee suggested alternative language, alternative ideas that do not pose the same amount of risk that exists as is written and subsequently rewritten. As there is no amended language and is not written, we do not view this to be in the best interest of the town. The advisory committee voted unanimously against this article.
Thank you. The Board of Selectmen have a position on this.
Susan Harrison with the Select Board. The Select Board discussed the suggested change with the petitioner. The board recognizes that some nearby town bylaws that allow dogs to be off-leash under direct and positive control of an owner or handler by effective voice command or e-collar. However, we have concerns with the proposed bylaw change as written based on scope, allowing dogs off-leash town-wide, liability to the town, safety, enforcement, and access to all residents to parks and town conservation land. Some towns have more targeted off-leash policy that we believe would address these concerns of scope, liability, enforcement, safety, and access. Specifically, Hingham's policy permits dogs off-leash under direct and positive control of an owner or handler by effective voice command or e-collar only in Bear Cove Park on odd calendar days with an off-leash permit. To obtain said permit, the dog owner or handler must submit an application to the town and include their homeowners or tenants' insurance policy, identification, and a photo of the dog and owner. If approved for an off-leash permit, the owner receives a lanyard with a photo of the owner and the dog that they must wear when walking their dog off-leash in Bear Cove Park on odd calendar days. The lanyard makes the policy enforceable. We spoke to Hingham's town clerk's office, and they have issued off-leash permits to hundreds of people without incident. As written, the broad approach to the leash law, the board voted unanimously against the citizens' position. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the motion to amend the bylaw? Mr. Fennedy at the center mic.
Sorry.
Dan Fenley, 65 Forest Lane. I've been a dog owner for over 25 years. I love dogs, I really do. But any of you with electric fence to keep your dog in your yard knows that the dog is going to go through that fence if it wants to. You're not going to stop it with an electric shock. You're not going to stop it with a voice command. As someone who's been attacked by dogs, no one can tell me that a voice command or an e-collar is going to stop the dog from behaving the way it wants to. We now have dogs in every store, on every beach, in shops and restaurants. Dogs that are out in public should be physically restrained by their owner. If you don't want to do that as a dog owner, then keep the dog home. Basically, what this article is doing by the words effective voice command is eliminating the leash law. That's what this article is doing. You're getting rid of the leash law. So for the safety of all the others in your community, I say do not approve this article. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman to my left.
John Kelty, 29 Vernon Road. I am in support of this amendment. This is about responsible dog ownership. For example, Thayer Whitney Woods, that is the requirement that you either leash your dog or you have positive voice control. I walk my dog there a lot. I've never had any incidents. On the other hand, I have had incidents where people walking their dog with a leash has attacked my dog. So it's really about whether people are responsible in how they control their dog. And frankly, it is a lot of fun to walk your dog off the leash in things like the conservation lands. It would be great. So I just vote in support, and I recommend supporting the amendment.
Thank you. Lady to my left.
Hi, Jean Maris, 28 Garden Road. I would agree with the first speaker who articulated all my points, but I'll say them anyway just to emphasize. I live in a neighborhood, a wonderful neighborhood, immediate neighborhood, and greater neighborhood where it's lots of dog owners. And this question is not about whether a dog is friendly or whether a dog owner is sorry if, a dog came onto your lawn or, came up and, was nuzzling up against you or something. It's about taking the responsibility away from the dog owner and putting the onus on people who are sitting in their front yards, in their driveways, on a front patio. Most of us, almost everybody in my immediate and greater neighborhood is not fenced in. Like, hardly anybody has a completely fenced in yard. So the onus then becomes on someone, if you really don't want an unleashed dog, if you don't want to have to deal with that, the onus is on you to put a fence around everything. Or if you're walking, I live in a neighborhood, again, the amount of walkers, runners, people with strollers, grandparents, parents, young people, everything, who also are walking their dogs on a leash would be dealing with an unleashed dog, even if it's friendly and well-behaved. Most dogs are friendly and well-behaved, but it's not the responsibility of anyone but the owner. And like the first person spoke, it is not possible to have a dog, and it shouldn't be on the dog, to be able to adhere to their owner's voice command. It's not going to happen. It doesn't happen. So for all the kids who are on skateboards and bicycles and walking, everybody is now at the whim of that dog being off leash. So I hope it won't pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my right.
Matthew Dibb, 166 Old Oaken Bucket. I just wanted to get a little more clarification from the advisory board. It sounds like the objection was really to the proposed amendment to the bylaw being such that it basically opens up the whole town for liability versus the comparison you're making to Hingham it sounds like in the Hingham case, it's circumscribed to a very specific area, and there's various policies that allow permitting in that area, whereas it sounds like the proposed amendment is such that it would basically mean the dog can be off-leash anywhere, and that's the liability concern. Is that
Well, that's how it's written. It's that dogs could be off-leash as long as they're under voice control or e-collar. It didn't say a specific area. What Hingham did is different, and we live in Scituate, and this is the way this article is written, so it could be a universal area all over the town. You could walk down Front Street as this is written with your dog off a leash, which that really does, in my opinion, the advisory committee opens up an enormous amount of risk.
And you mentioned that you had, it was mentioned in the booklet that there was discussion with the petitioner about different wording. Was the different wording more in line with what Hingham was going for? Is that what you were referring to?
I can't remember the exact wording that we suggested, but, at the advisory committee, we don't have, as we said, binding votes or anything like that, but what we do is try to encourage the people of the town who come there to look at different angles, and we just gave our opinion that what might be considered good, which was similar to what Hingham did on certain days, have dog parks that have off-collar, but again, it was just a suggestion, maybe something to think about, because this is so drastic, in my opinion, that maybe a more conservative approach like that is well publicized or notified, and like Hingham did, basically the dog officers basically test if you can actually do it. And if you pass that, that's great. Then it's good. I have 2 dogs. I love dogs. I would love to walk them off leash all the time, but you just can't, it's just a little kid walking by or anything could happen. It's really for the safety of the dog as well. The dog on a leash could get hit by a car, not on a leash could get hit by a car. There's a lot of it's open-ended risk, really. So that's really what my opinion, and that's where we're coming from.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Mr. Gentleman in the center, Mike.
John Whitaker, 594 Country Way. My wife Joan and I go back in Scituate to a time when there wasn't a leash law. If you pass this article tonight, we will no longer have a leash law. Now, no one loves dogs better than my wife Joan. Most dog owners are responsible, but all too many are absolutely not responsible. When our kids were little, we had children attacked by dogs in Scituate. We had children attacked and bitten by dogs in Scituate. We had pets killed by dogs in Scituate. We don't want to see that come back. You don't want to see that come back. You can certainly enjoy your dog on a leash. You can go to the dog park, you can go to other places and unleash the dog. There is a real danger to our children, to pets, to adults, to seniors, if we just let these rogue dogs run unleashed in Scituate. I don't think we should go back to that. Someone just touched on another subject. People who are irresponsible with their dogs tend to let the dogs run through the streets. That's why every once in a while, most often, you see a dead dog by the side of the street. That represents an irresponsible owner. So I would suggest, go along with the advisory. No, keep the leash law. Thank you.
Thank you. Lady on my right.
Kathleen Field, Lawson Green. I used to take an older friend walking on Minot Beach. We had to stop. She couldn't walk on the beach anymore because of the dogs that were running around and friendly, but coming up and grabbing her and jumping on her legs. As we get older, the doctors, your children will tell you, whatever you do, don't fall. An unleashed dog is a hazard, and it's an unnecessary hazard. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my left.
Renee Hashi of Hatherley Road, 530 Hatherley Road. I've been bitten by a dog twice, the same dog. Both times the owner or the one in charge was giving all sorts of commands, don't do that, don't do it. It did it anyhow. So I don't think voice commands are an appropriate means of restraining a dog that needs restraining. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman at the center mic.
Hi, Paul Barkowitz, 18 Damon Lane. Call the question, please.
We have a motion to move the question. This requires a 2/3 vote. The effect of the motion will be to end all debate and go to a vote on the motion. All those in favor of ending the debate, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? We have a unanimous vote to move the question. So we move to the question, which is whether to approve a bylaw revision with respect to dogs being on or off leash. All those in favor of the proposed revision say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion fails. We've concluded the meeting. I'll accept the motion to dissolve. Motion is dissolved.